So Jalil, we wanted to get a little bit into your political history. Obviously, as a young man, you joined the Panthers late 1960s, early 70s. Why don't you tell us about what was the conditions and what caused you to even join the Black Panther Party?
Well, to be honest with you, Kamal, I really have to go back to my own consciousness, level of consciousness that I grew up with. And I grew up in a household where consciousness was there, black consciousness was there. My mom, as a young teenager mother, right, she used to be an African dancer, right? She learned African dancing. She used to teach that to my sister and myself, African dance. And one of the things she learned, and one thing she taught my sister and I, that we're Africans, right? I grew up with the idea that we're African. I never grew up with the idea of being a Negro or being a colored person or whatever kind of derogatory names that they were black people at that time, all right? So my consciousness began with my mom, at the foot of my mom, right, with the idea that we are Africans. In high school, when I was going to high school, I became a Black Student Union chairperson, a leader in Black Student Union, and fighting for Black Studies when they didn't have Black Studies, back in the days. So we organized for Black Studies in our high school. One of the things that was important to me, right, helped in my own development and influence was I used to be good in school, always good in school. School was never a problem for me. However, math, one of the things that I love, I used to get tutored. And one of the persons who used to tutor me was John Carlos. John Carlos, some of you may know, was the iconic photo of him and Tommy Smith at the Olympics, 1968 Olympics, with the fist up in the air, right? Well, he was one of my tutors, right? And so I grew up in that kind of era of people engaged in struggle, engaged in support of black ideas, of black liberation, of black thought, right? And so I was always have been in support of that kind of thinking at that time. When I was 15, my mom, for my 15th birthday, she bought me a conga drum, right? That was my 15th birthday. And I learned how to play the congas. I was involved in a group called the Afro Brotherhood, right? And that's my cultural nationalist days, right? When I was actually into the idea of being, that cultural nationalism was going to be a form of liberation. It was where the boobas and the dashikis and the bees and the dark glasses and play the conga drums, the whole idea. Trying to learn some Swahili, was unable to do so. Because, we didn't even have no teachers or anything like that, learning off the cuff. But when I saw the Black Panthers, I think it was in 1968, going to Sacramento to fight against the Mumford Act, which was when Reagan was the president was the governor of California. He tried to prevent us from carrying weapons. At the time, the law was that we had open carrying, like they have in some states today. But when the Panthers was open carrying, they wanted to change the law. So they changed the law, and it was called the Mumford Act. And so the Panthers went to Sacramento, the capital of Sacramento, carrying their weapons to oppose the implementing of the Mumford Act. And when I saw that, I said, these are some black guys that I want to be a part of.
It's a broad question, but can you talk a little bit about what the experience of prison in that long is like and how you survived, intact, strong, with your politics intact, that kind of thing?
Yeah. Well, let me just say this here. Prison ain't for the weak, right? But I also want to say this also. Prison ain't no place for one to seek to go to either, all right? Especially for the young kids out there involved in these gangs and street organizations, so forth and so on, and have no disregard for other people's lives or even for their own in that respect. Prison is not a place for you to get your street creds, right? Prison is a place where you are actually being exploited by the system, okay? So in my understanding, because I was political before I went into prison, I remained to be political while I was in prison. I became an organizer while I was in prison for the most part. I started the first revolutionary national newspaper, prison newspaper called Armed Spirit, while I was in San Quentin prison. I started the first, organized the first march on Washington, D.C., and also started had the first petition ever submitted to the United Nations by prisoners that was heard by members of the United Nations. Was a UN prisoners petition campaign in regards to political prisoners. first time the issue of political prisoners was ever brought to the United Nations. I organized that. And also in 1998, I started the first a national organization called Jericho Movement as a result of having people march, what we call the Jericho March, to Washington, D.C. In respects to the issues of the existence of political prisoners. Jericho now have been in existence for going on over 20 years, right? I'm co-founder of Jericho along with my sister Sophia Bukhari and my dear brother Baba Herman Ferguson. God bless. They rest in peace. Both of them, they were the ancestors. And so I'm the only living co-founder of the Jericho Movement, co-founder of the Jericho Movement today. And so we'll find that for me, prison was just an extension of the community in terms of my organizing and trying to deal with the issues of it being in prison and recognizing that there's a system that created conditions for our people, particularly black and brown people, to be sent in prison en masse, right, en masse. And so all the time I was in prison, I organized. I used to teach black history classes. I used to teach sociology classes. I used to teach poetry classes, and I used to organize. So that's how I survived prison. I survived prison by continuing to live the spirit of the party, live the spirit of the movement, and being of service to our people, inside and outside of prison. That's how I survived it.